Ambassador Zefkari stood before the massive circular chamber of the Galactic Council, his scaled hands shaking as he gripped the speaking podium. The great hall stretched out before him like a vast amphitheater, filled with representatives from 47 different star systems. Each species sat in their designated sections, from the tall crystalline beings of Altair to the floating gas creatures of the nebula worlds. Despite their different forms, all shared the same expression of fear and desperation that had become common in recent months. The war with the Void Reapers had been raging for 3 standard galactic cycles now. What started as border skirmishes in the Outer Rim had quickly escalated into a full-scale invasion that consumed entire star systems. The enemy moved like a plague across the galaxy, leaving nothing but empty space and dead worlds in their wake. Traditional warfare had proven useless against them. Every honor code, every rule of civilized combat, every attempt at negotiation had failed completely. Fleet Admiral Quaranash, a massive insectoid being from the Hive worlds, approached the central platform. His 4 arms gestured to the holographic display that materialized above the assembly. The 3-dimensional map showed the current state of the galaxy in stark detail. Red zones marked Void Reaper-controlled territory, which now covered nearly a quarter of known space. Yellow zones indicated contested systems where battles still raged. The green zones, representing safe Council territory, seemed to shrink every time Zefkari looked at the display. The losses continued to mount. Quaranash clicked in his native language, while translation devices carried his words to every delegate. The Kepler defense fleet was completely destroyed yesterday. 17 heavy cruisers, 43 destroyers, and over 50,000 personnel. The enemy took no prisoners, as usual. They left no survivors, as always. A collective shudder ran through the assembly. The Void Reapers had never been interested in conquest in any traditional sense. They did not seek resources, territory, or slaves. They simply destroyed everything living they encountered, then moved on to the next system. Their ships were biological constructs that seemed to feed on the destruction they caused. No one knew where they came from, or what drove them to such complete annihilation. High Chancellor Valtar rose from her seat at the center of the chamber. The ancient being had lived for over 800 standard years and had seen the rise and fall of several galactic civilizations. Her voice carried the weight of desperate authority as she addressed the assembly. "We have tried everything within our power and knowledge," she began. "Our finest military minds have studied their tactics and found no weakness we can exploit. Our most advanced weapons barely scratch their hulls. Our fastest ships cannot outrun them. Our strongest shields cannot withstand their attacks. We are facing an enemy that operates completely outside our understanding of warfare." The chamber fell silent, except for the quiet hum of life support systems and translation devices. Every delegate knew what was coming next. They had all seen the classified reports, the forbidden intelligence gathered from the small blue world in the Sol system, the planet that had been under strict quarantine for over 200 years under the Primitive Species Protection Protocol. "There is one option we have not yet considered," Valtar continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "One species that might possess the knowledge we need to defeat this threat. But approaching them would require us to break the most sacred law of our civilization." Ambassador Krialan of the Centauri Republic stood up from his delegation. The tall, blue-skinned humanoid had been one of the strongest supporters of the quarantine protocols throughout his career. His next words shocked everyone in the chamber. "You mean the humans," he said simply. "The species we have been protecting from galactic civilization for the past 2 centuries. The reaction was immediate and intense. Dozens of delegates began speaking at once in their various languages, creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, growls, and harmonic tones. Some expressed outrage at the suggestion, Others voiced confusion, and a few whispered their support. Veltar raised her hand for silence, and gradually the chamber quieted. "Yes," she confirmed. "The humans of Earth. Our long-range observation teams have been monitoring their development as required by the Protection Protocol. What they have discovered about human warfare is both fascinating and terrifying." She gestured, and new images appeared in the holographic display. These showed scenes from Earth's surface, human armies in various historical periods, weapons being tested, and strategic planning sessions. The images were clearly taken from great distances by advanced surveillance equipment, but they were detailed enough to see the humans' faces and actions. "They fight differently than any species we have ever encountered," Veltar explained. "Where we wage war with honor codes and respect for civilian populations, they have developed what they call total war. They target supply lines, destroy infrastructure, and use psychological warfare as standard tactics. They fight not just to defeat their enemies, but to completely destroy their ability to continue fighting." Zethkari watched as the delegates studied the images with growing unease. The humans in the recordings displayed a level of tactical ruthlessness that no galactic species had employed for thousands of years. They showed no hesitation in using any advantage available to them, no matter how underhanded it might seem, by galactic standards. "This is exactly why we quarantined them in the first place," protested Ambassador Tessara of the Peaceful Collective. "Their violent nature makes them unsuitable for galactic society. They would destabilize everything we have built." "And yet," Admiral Koranash interjected, "their violent nature might be exactly what we need to survive the Void Reapers. Our civilized approach to warfare has proven completely inadequate against an enemy that recognizes no rules or limitations." The debate that followed was intense and emotional. Some delegates argued that involving a primitive species would violate every principle the Galactic Council stood for. Others pointed out that those principles would not matter if every living being in the galaxy was dead. The philosophical implications were staggering, but the practical reality was undeniable. They were losing the war badly. As the discussion continued, Zethkari found himself thinking about the human military footage he had reviewed in preparation for this session. The humans displayed a creativity in combat that bordered on artistic, if art could be deadly and efficient. They adapted quickly to new situations, used deception as naturally as breathing, and showed a willingness to sacrifice themselves for victory that was both admirable and frightening. Finally, Veltar called for order once more. The chamber fell silent as she prepared to speak again. Everyone knew that whatever she said next would determine the fate of not just the Galactic Council, but potentially every living being in the galaxy. "We face a choice that will define us for all time," she said solemnly. "We can maintain our principles and face extinction with honor, or we can compromise everything we believe in for the chance of survival. The question before us is simple. Do we contact Earth?" Zethkari stepped forward one final time. As the Council's expert on human behavior, his opinion would carry significant weight in the final decision. He looked out at the assembled delegates, seeing fear, hope, and desperate uncertainty in their alien faces. 200 years ago, we created the quarantine to protect them from us," he said quietly. "Now we may need to protect ourselves from them. But if we are to survive as a civilization, we may have no choice but to ask these dangerous primitives to save us all." Colonel Jake Morrison walked through the reinforced corridors of the Cheyenne Mountain facility, his footsteps echoing off the polished concrete walls. The complex had been carved deep into the Colorado Rockies decades ago, originally designed to survive nuclear warfare. Now it served a different purpose entirely, housing the most classified military unit in human history, the Anomaly Response Division. The elevator descended for what felt like an eternity before finally stopping at Sub-Level 7. Morrison stepped out into a bustling command center filled with sophisticated monitoring equipment, massive computer displays, and personnel wearing no standard military insignia. To the outside world, this facility did not exist. To the handful of people who knew about it, it was humanity's first line of defense against the unknown. Dr. Lisa Patterson looked up from her workstation as Morrison approached. The scientist had been analyzing strange sensor readings for the past 15 years, tracking patterns that suggested Earth was under systematic observation. Her desk was covered with printouts, data charts, and photographs of unusual atmospheric disturbances that the public dismissed as weather phenomena or optical illusions. "Colonel, we have a problem," she said, pointing to her main display screen. The monitoring stations picked up another surge in extraterrestrial communications traffic. "This is the biggest spike we have ever recorded." Morrison studied the scrolling data with growing concern. For decades, his team had been intercepting occasional signals from space that clearly showed artificial intelligence. The transmissions followed mathematical patterns too complex and purposeful to be natural phenomena. They had always assumed these were routine observation reports from whatever civilization was watching Earth. But the recent signals were different. In both frequency and intensity. Major Rick Coleman joined them at the workstation, carrying a folder marked with the highest security classifications. He had spent years reverse engineering technology recovered from crashed alien probes, slowly building humanity's understanding of advanced sciences that were centuries beyond their current capabilities. "The pattern analysis is complete," Coleman reported. "These are not the regular monitoring signals we have been tracking. The mathematical structures suggest tactical communications, casualty reports, and strategic planning data. Someone out there is fighting a war, and they are losing badly." Dr. Amanda Brooks hurried over from the linguistics section, her face pale with excitement and fear. She had been working on deciphering the mathematical languages found in extraterrestrial data streams, making slow but steady progress in understanding how advanced civilizations communicated across interstellar distances. "I have managed to translate some fragments," she announced, setting down a tablet covered with her notes. "The signals contain references to something called void reapers and multiple mentions of destroyed star systems. The entities sending these messages are definitely in distress." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine as he processed this information. The existence of alien life had been suspected for years based on the evidence his team had gathered, but this was the first indication that the galaxy beyond Earth was in serious trouble. If advanced civilizations were struggling against some kind of threat, what would that mean for humanity? Captain Steve Murphy burst into the command center from the communications section, holding a data pad and breathing heavily from running. He had been stationed at the remote listening post in Alaska when the latest signal surge began, monitoring frequencies that most people did not even know existed. "Colonel, you need to see this immediately," Murphy said urgently. "The Alaska station intercepted a massive data transmission 30 minutes ago. The signal was so strong, it overloaded our primary receivers. Whatever sent this is either very close or incredibly powerful." The team gathered around Murphy's datapad as he played back the intercepted transmission. Even converted to human audio frequencies, the signal was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It pulsed with complex harmonics and mathematical progressions that suggested multiple voices speaking simultaneously in perfect coordination. Lieutenant Jenny Ward, the team's linguistics specialist, listened to the recording with growing amazement. She had spent years studying Earth's most complex languages and communication systems, but this transmission operated on principles that challenged everything she thought she knew about intelligent communication. "This is not just a language," she whispered in awe. "This is some kind of collective consciousness communicating with itself across vast distances." The mathematical structures suggest the speakers are sharing thoughts and experiences in real time. Dr. Patterson began running the signal through her analysis programs, breaking down the transmission into component frequencies and data patterns. What she found confirmed everyone's worst fears about the situation beyond Earth's solar system. The transmission contains star charts marking dead systems, she reported grimly. Entire regions of space are being marked as lifeless. Whatever these Void Reapers are, they are not just conquering territory, they are completely sterilizing it. Morrison made the decision that would change everything for his small team, and potentially for all of humanity. He picked up the secure phone that connected directly to the Pentagon and began dialing a number that had never been used for anything this important. "This is Colonel Morrison at Cheyenne Mountain," he said when the call connected. "I need to speak with the Secretary of Defense immediately. Code authorization Alpha 77. Yes, I know what time it is. This cannot wait until morning." While Morrison arranged the emergency briefing, the rest of the team continued analyzing the intercepted data. Every new piece of information painted a more terrifying picture of the galaxy beyond Earth. The alien communications described battles involving thousands of ships, weapons that could destroy planets, and an enemy that showed no interest in anything except complete extermination. Dr. Brooks made another breakthrough in her translation efforts, discovering references to something called the Galactic Council and quarantine protocols. The implications were staggering. Not only was Earth being observed, but humanity had been deliberately isolated from a larger galactic civilization. "They have been protecting us," she said in amazement. "For hundreds of years, they have been keeping us separate from galactic politics and conflicts. But now something has changed." Coleman reviewed the technical specifications embedded in the alien transmissions, comparing them with the technology he had reverse engineered from crashed probes. The advanced civilizations possessed weapons and defenses that operated on principles human science was only beginning to understand. Yet somehow, they were losing their war against the Void Reapers. Murphy continued monitoring the communications frequencies, tracking the flow of alien signals as they crisscrossed the galaxy. The pattern that emerged was one of retreat and consolidation, with multiple civilizations falling back toward some kind of central stronghold. "They are running out of space to retreat," he observed. "The signals suggest they are being pushed back to their core worlds. Whatever safe territory they have left is shrinking fast." The secure phone rang, and Morrison answered immediately. The conversation was brief and urgent, conducted in the coded language that intelligence officers used when discussing matters of ultimate national security. "The briefing is set for tomorrow morning at 0600, Morrison announced after hanging up. "The President, Joint Chiefs, and National Security Council will be in attendance. We are going to tell them that Earth is not alone in the universe, that we have been under observation for centuries, and that a galactic war is raging beyond our solar system." Ward made one final discovery as the team prepared their presentation. Materials. Hidden within the most recent transmission was a mathematical sequence that appeared to be some kind of identification code or signature. When she ran it through the translation programs, the result sent shockwaves through everyone present. "This signal is coming from inside our solar system," she announced. "Whatever sent this transmission is very close to Earth. They might already be here." The harmony of stars limped through space near Earth's moon, her hull scarred and smoking from the desperate escape through Void Reaper territory. Ambassador Zethkari gripped the command chair as his ship's damaged systems struggled to maintain basic life support. The decision to break 2 centuries of quarantine protocols had been made in desperation. But now that he was actually in the Sol system, the magnitude of what he was about to do terrified him. Captain Murphy's monitoring station in Alaska was the first to detect the alien vessel. Alarms blared through the facility, as sensors that had never registered anything larger than space debris suddenly showed a massive artificial object decelerating from impossible speeds. Within minutes, every military installation on Earth was tracking the unknown craft. President Helen Carter was pulled from an emergency cabinet meeting about rising tensions in Eastern Europe when her chief of staff burst into the Oval Office with news that changed everything. The phone call from NORAD was brief and shocking. An alien spacecraft had just appeared near the moon and was broadcasting on every human communication frequency simultaneously. The message was simple, but earth-shattering. In perfect English, transmitted on radio, television, internet, and even emergency frequencies. The alien voice spoke with quiet desperation. "This is Ambassador Zethkari of the Galactic Council. We need to talk immediately. Your world is in terrible danger, and we require your help to prevent the extinction of all life in this galaxy." Within hours, the White House Situation Room was packed with the most powerful people on Earth. President Carter sat at the head of the long table, flanked by Secretary of Defense Paul Johnson and National Security Advisor Helen Ross. Colonel Morrison and his team had been flown in from Colorado to provide their expertise on the alien communications they had been monitoring. Dr. Patterson worked frantically to establish proper two-way communication with the alien vessel, while the world's media erupted in chaos. Every news channel, website, and social media platform was flooded with speculation, fear, and excitement about humanity's first official contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. The communication link stabilized just as Ambassador Zethkari's image appeared on the main screen in the Situation Room. Despite his reptilian features and scaled skin, his eyes conveyed an unmistakable sense of urgency and fear that transcended species barriers. He spoke slowly and clearly, using simple words that could be easily translated. "I am sorry for this violation of your species quarantine," he began. "For over 200 Earth years, the Galactic Council has protected your world from knowledge of the greater galaxy. We believed you were too primitive and violent to safely interact with advanced civilizations. We were trying to give you time to evolve beyond your warlike nature." President Carter leaned forward, her mind reeling from the implications of what she was hearing. The idea that Earth had been deliberately isolated by advanced aliens challenged every assumption humanity had made about their place in the universe. "Why are you here now?" she asked directly. "What has changed that made you break this quarantine?" Zethkari's expression grew even more grave as he prepared to explain the situation that had driven him to this desperate measure. Behind him, the damaged interior of his ship was visible, with sparks occasionally flying from broken control panels. "The galaxy is at war with an enemy called the Void Reapers," he explained. "They are not like any species we have ever encountered. They do not seek territory or resources. They simply destroy every living thing they find, then move on to the next star system. In 3 years of fighting, they have consumed nearly a quarter of known space." General Nancy Davis, the Joint Chiefs' most experienced strategist, studied the alien ambassador with professional interest. His words described an enemy that operated completely outside normal military doctrine, which presented both terrifying challenges and potential opportunities. "What do you want from us?" Davis asked bluntly. "We are just one world with primitive technology. How could we possibly help against an enemy that has defeated advanced galactic civilizations?" The answer that came next would haunt everyone in the room for the rest of their lives. Zethkari activated a holographic display that showed footage of human military operations throughout history. The images had clearly been taken by long-range surveillance equipment over many decades. "You fight differently than any species in the galaxy," he said quietly. "We have been studying your warfare for centuries, and what we have observed both fascinates and terrifies us. Where galactic civilizations wage war with honor codes and respect for civilian populations, you employ what you call total war. The holographic display showed scenes from Earth's major conflicts, strategic bombing campaigns, guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, and siege tactics that prioritized victory over honor. The alien ambassador continued his explanation. With growing unease, you target supply lines, destroy infrastructure, use deception as a standard tactic, and show willingness to sacrifice anything for victory. You employ asymmetric warfare, scorched earth policies, and strategies designed to break your enemy's will to fight. These approaches are considered barbaric by galactic standards. Dr. Brooks watched the alien's presentation with growing understanding. Humanity's capacity for violence, which many humans considered their greatest moral failing, might actually be exactly what the galaxy needed to survive an extinction-level threat. Secretary Johnson asked the question that everyone was thinking. Are you saying that our violent nature, which you consider primitive, is why you need our help? Yes, Zethkari admitted reluctantly. The Galactic Council has tried everything within our understanding of civilized warfare. We have deployed our finest fleets, our most advanced weapons, our best military minds. Nothing has worked against the Void Reapers because they do not follow any rules we recognize. Admiral Betty Sullivan, who had been listening silently from her position at the far end of the table, finally spoke up. Her experience in naval warfare had taught her that victory often went to those willing to use unconventional tactics. You are asking us to teach you how to fight dirty, she observed. How to win wars by any means necessary, regardless of honor, or traditional military courtesy. The alien ambassador nodded slowly, his scaled features showing the internal struggle he felt about making this request. Everything his civilization stood for was opposed to the kind of warfare humans practiced. Naturally, the alternative is extinction, he said simply. If we cannot find a way to defeat the Void Reapers, every living being in the galaxy will die. Your species will eventually be discovered and destroyed along with the rest of us. President Carter looked around the room at her advisors, seeing the same mixture of opportunity and moral uncertainty in their faces. The decision she was about to make would define humanity's relationship with the galaxy forever. What exactly are you proposing? She asked carefully. Join us, Zethkari replied. Become part of the Galactic Council as our military advisors. And allies, help us learn how to fight like humans. In return, we will share our technology and knowledge, advancing your civilization by thousands of years. The room fell silent as everyone processed the magnitude of the offer. Humanity was being invited to join a galactic community, but only because their capacity for violence was needed to prevent universal extinction. We need time to consider this, President Carter said finally. This decision affects not just our government, but all of humanity. Time is something we do not have much of, Zethkari warned. The Void Reapers are advancing toward the galactic core worlds. If they are not stopped soon, there will be nothing left to save. President Carter stood before the joint session of Congress and the assembled world leaders on video screens around the globe. The decision she was about to announce would change humanity forever, but the alternative was too terrible to consider. Behind her, the alien ambassador Zethkari waited patiently, his presence serving as undeniable proof that Earth was no longer alone in the universe. After 72 hours of consultation with our allies and careful consideration of all options, she began. The United States, in cooperation with the United Nations, accepts the Galactic Council's request for military assistance. Effective immediately, Earth will join the galactic community as an active participant in the war against the Void Reapers. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Some world leaders cheered, others protested, and many simply sat in stunned silence as they processed the implications. Within hours, every military installation on Earth was buzzing with activity as humanity began the largest mobilization in its history. General Frank Williams found himself promoted overnight to commander of the newly formed Galactic Defense Force. His first briefing took place in a hastily converted warehouse at Edwards Air Force Base, where teams of human and alien engineers worked together to retrofit Earth's most advanced aircraft with technology that seemed like magic. Admiral Betty Sullivan walked through the Norfolk Naval Shipyard, watching in amazement as alien technicians installed energy shields and faster-than-light communication systems on human warships. The technology integration was happening at an incredible pace, with alien scientists sharing knowledge that advanced human understanding by centuries in just days. Colonel Morrison led the first human delegation to travel beyond Earth's solar system. The journey to Sanctuary Prime, the Galactic Council's military headquarters, took only hours using alien transportation technology. As their ship dropped out of hyperspace near the Fortress world, Morrison got his first look at the true scale of galactic civilization. Sanctuary Prime was a massive artificial world built entirely for military purposes. Its surface was covered with weapons installations, training facilities, and docking bays that could accommodate ships the size of cities. Thousands of vessels from dozens of different species filled the orbital space around the planet, all preparing for the desperate fight against the Void Reapers. Fleet Admiral Coronash met Morrison's delegation at the main military complex, the massive insectoid being towered over the humans. But his manner was respectful and curious as he studied the species that might hold the key to galactic survival. "Welcome to Sanctuary Prime." Coronash clicked through his translation device. "We are eager to learn from your military expertise, though I must admit many of our officers are uncomfortable with human tactical proposals." Morrison was escorted to the main strategic planning center, where holographic displays showed the current state of the galactic war. The situation was even worse than the initial reports had suggested. Void Reaper forces had broken through multiple defensive lines and were advancing toward the core worlds at an alarming rate. "Show me your standard battle tactics," Morrison requested, studying the three-dimensional map of recent engagements. What he saw confirmed his worst fears about galactic military doctrine. The alien civilizations fought with predictable patterns that prioritized honor over effectiveness. They announced their attacks in advance, engaged in formal fleet battles, and refused to target civilian infrastructure, even when it supported enemy operations. Their approach to warfare was noble, but completely inadequate against an enemy that recognized no such limitations. "You fight like gentlemen," Morrison observed bluntly. "The problem is that the Void Reapers are not gentlemen. They exploit your honor codes and use your own principles against you." Meanwhile, back on Earth, Dr. Patterson worked with alien scientists to understand Void Reaper technology and weaknesses. The enemy ships were biological constructs that operated more like living organisms than mechanical vessels. They could adapt to different weapons, heal damage over time, and coordinate their actions through some kind of collective consciousness. Dr. Kevin Ross and Dr. Mary Thompson led teams developing new weapons, specifically designed to exploit Void Reaper vulnerabilities. The aliens provided advanced materials and energy sources, while the humans contributed tactical innovation and a willingness to pursue any advantage regardless of conventional limitations. Captain Murphy coordinated the first joint human-alien military exercise in Earth's solar system. Human naval tactics were adapted for three-dimensional space combat, with submarines becoming the model for stealth attack vessels that could strike from unexpected angles. The exercise results shocked even the most experienced galactic commanders. Admiral Sullivan's fleet, using Earth's submarine warfare principles adapted for space, successfully defeated 3 times their number in simulated combat against veteran alien crews. The key was abandoning the formal battle lines that Galactic warfare traditionally employed. "You do not fight fair," observed Commander Velanash of the Suntorai Republic after his fleet was eliminated in the simulation. His tone suggested both admiration and unease with human tactical methods. "Fair fighting is for sports," Admiral Sullivan replied. "War is about winning by any means necessary. The Void Reapers understand this, even if you do not." Lieutenant Ward worked as a communications specialist, helping coordinate between human and alien forces using principles derived from Earth's most successful military campaigns. The aliens struggled to adapt to human concepts like deception, misdirection, and asymmetric warfare. Major Coleman presented his analysis of galactic warfare to a gathering of alien military leaders. His presentation highlighted the fundamental differences between human and galactic approaches to conflict. "You see war as a contest between equals governed by mutual respect," he explained. "Humans see war as a problem to be solved using any available tools. We do not respect our enemies. We study them to find their weaknesses, then exploit those weaknesses without mercy." The aliens found this perspective both disturbing and fascinating. Their civilizations had evolved beyond such ruthless approaches to conflict, but they were beginning to understand that their evolution might have been a mistake when facing an enemy like the Void Reapers. Dr. Brooks made a breakthrough in understanding Void Reaper communication systems. The enemy's greatest strength, their perfect coordination through collective consciousness, might also be their greatest vulnerability. If the communication network could be disrupted, their entire fleet structure would collapse. "We need to develop a weapon that attacks their minds rather than their ships," she explained to the Joint Research Team. "Something that turns their unity against them." The concept was revolutionary and terrifying. No galactic civilization had ever developed weapons designed to attack consciousness itself. Such technology was considered taboo, crossing lines that civilized species refused to cross. But humans had no such limitations. As the first joint human-alien battle group prepared for deployment, the cultural differences became even more apparent. Alien officers insisted on formal declarations of war in advance, warning to enemy forces. Human commanders wanted to strike without warning, targeting supply lines and communication nodes before the enemy could respond. The compromise reached was uniquely human in its approach. They would issue formal declarations as the aliens required, but the content of those declarations would be psychological warfare designed to demoralize and confuse the enemy. Honor would be satisfied, but victory would still be pursued through deception and misdirection. The transformation of galactic military doctrine was happening faster than anyone had expected. Species that had fought honorably for thousands of years were learning to think like predators. The humans were not just sharing their technology and tactics, but fundamentally changing how the galaxy approached the concept of warfare itself. The combined human-alien fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, where the Void Reapers had established their largest forward staging area. Admiral Sullivan stood on the bridge of her flagship alongside Fleet Admiral Coronash, watching as thousands of ships from dozens of species formed into the most diverse military force in galactic history. The enemy installation was massive beyond anything the humans had imagined. Biological ships the size of small moons floated in perfect formation around the system's dead planets, while smaller vessels moved between them like antibodies in a living organism. The Void Reapers had consumed every trace of life in the system, and were using it as a launching point for their assault on the galactic core worlds. "Task Force Liberation is in position," Captain Murphy reported from his communication station aboard the command ship. "All units report ready for operation." Dirty pool. The battle plan they had developed was unlike anything ever attempted in galactic warfare. Instead of the traditional head-on fleet engagement that the Void Reapers expected. The humans had proposed a complex strategy involving diversionary attacks, electronic warfare, and coordinated strikes against enemy supply lines and communication. Nodes. Colonel Morrison led the first phase of the attack from a stealth ship positioned behind one of the system's outer planets. His mission was to deploy Dr. Patterson's new weapon, the Cognitive Disruption Array, at precisely the right moment to maximize its effect on the Void Reaper collective consciousness. Remember, Morrison spoke into his communicator to the assault. Teams positioned throughout the system. We do not fight fair because our enemy does not deserve fairness. They chose to become monsters when they decided to exterminate all life in the galaxy. Now we show them what real monsters look like. The battle began with what appeared to be a standard galactic fleet engagement. Admiral Sullivan's main force approached the Void Reaper installation in traditional formation, broadcasting formal challenges and demands for surrender as galactic military protocol required. The enemy responded predictably, moving their largest ships forward to meet the threat in direct combat. But while the Void Reapers focused on the main fleet, human strike teams were already moving into position, using tactics borrowed from submarine warfare and special operations. Small groups of ships approached the enemy from unexpected angles, hidden behind debris fields and using electronic countermeasures to avoid detection. Lieutenant Ward coordinated the complex communications network that allowed human and alien forces to work together despite their different approaches to warfare. The aliens struggled with the deception required for the plan to work, but they were learning to trust human tactical judgment, even when it contradicted their natural instincts. First surprise came when the diversionary attacks began. Instead of targeting the enemy's strongest ships, the human plan called for strikes against support vessels and communication relays that the Void Reapers had never considered primary targets. The biological fleet began to show signs of confusion as their coordination network suffered interference. Major Coleman commanded one of the assault groups, tasked with boarding enemy vessels. The Void Reapers had never faced close quarters combat because galactic civilizations considered such tactics too barbaric for modern warfare. When human Marines began cutting their way into enemy ships using methods borrowed from urban warfare and siege tactics, the biological constructs had no effective response. Target the neural clusters. Coleman ordered his teams as they fought their way through the organic corridors of a Void Reaper command ship. Dr. Brooks says those are the key nodes for their collective consciousness. Disrupt enough of them and the whole network breaks down. The turning point came when Dr. Patterson activated the cognitive disruption array from its concealed position, near the system's primary star. The weapon was based on research into Void Reaper communication methods, designed to turn their greatest strength into a cascading weakness. The effect was immediate and devastating. The perfect coordination that had made the Void Reapers so dangerous began to collapse as the disruption signals spread through their collective consciousness like a virus. Ships that had moved in perfect harmony suddenly began colliding with each other as their shared awareness fragmented. Admiral Sullivan pressed the advantage with ruthless efficiency. Her fleet abandoned the formal battle lines that galactic warfare traditionally employed, instead using the confusion to strike at critical targets with overwhelming force. The human approach to combat, which prioritized results over honor, proved devastatingly effective against an enemy adapted to fight civilized opponents. Fleet. Admiral Coronash watched in amazement as human tactical doctrine transformed the battle. Where galactic commanders would have accepted surrender and shown mercy to defeated enemies, the humans pursued complete destruction of the Void Reaper force to prevent any possibility of regrouping or escape. This is not warfare as we understand it, Coronash observed to Admiral Sullivan as they watched Void Reaper ships being systematically eliminated. This is extermination. They chose extermination when they decided to wipe out entire civilizations, Sullivan replied coldly. We are simply giving them what they gave to others. The difference is that we are doing it to save lives rather than destroy them. The battle at Kepler 442 lasted 18 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the Void Reaper forward base. Not a single enemy vessel escaped to warn other Void Reaper forces about the new tactics being employed against them. The victory sent shockwaves through both the galactic community and the enemy collective consciousness. Of the victory spread rapidly through galactic communication networks. For the first time in 3 years of war, a major Void Reaper installation had been completely eliminated. Other species began requesting human military advisors to help them adapt their own forces to the new tactical doctrines. Dr. Kevin Ross and Dr. Mary Thompson led the effort to mass produce a cognitive disruption array and other weapons specifically designed to exploit Void Reaper weaknesses. The technology was shared freely with all galactic civilizations. Though many struggled with the moral implications of using weapons that attacked consciousness itself, the strategic implications of the victory extended far beyond the immediate tactical success. The Void Reapers, faced with an enemy that fought without their expected limitations, began to show hesitation and uncertainty in their advance toward the galactic core worlds. Their perfect confidence in their invincibility had been shattered. President Carter addressed the combined Earth and galactic populations from the United Nations building in New York. Behind her, representatives from dozens of alien species stood in silent testimony to the transformation that had occurred in galactic civilization. 6 months ago, humanity believed we were alone in the universe, she began. Today, we stand as full members of a galactic community that spans thousands of worlds and countless species. We did not seek this responsibility, but we have accepted it willingly. The President's speech was broadcast across 47 star systems, translated into hundreds of languages and communication methods. Her words carried special weight because they came from the species that had changed everything about how the galaxy approached the concept of warfare. The Void Reapers chose to become enemies of all life, Carter continued. They showed no mercy to civilian populations, respected no rules of civilized conduct, and sought nothing but complete extermination of everything they encountered. We have shown them that when you declare war on all life will declare war on you. The transformation of galactic military doctrine continued as more species adopted human tactical concepts. The old honor codes and formal approaches to warfare were not abandoned entirely, but they were supplemented with pragmatic strategies designed to achieve victory rather than maintain dignity. Ambassador Zethkari delivered the final address to the Galactic Council, acknowledging that their greatest fear had become their salvation. The species they had quarantined to protect galactic civilization from human violence had instead saved that civilization from extinction. We brought humanity into our war because we were desperate, he admitted to the assembled delegates. We have learned that sometimes survival requires us to become something we do not want to be. The humans have taught us that there are worse things than losing our innocence. The war against the Void Reapers continued, but the balance of power had shifted permanently. The enemy that had seemed unstoppable when facing civilized galactic warfare found themselves increasingly unable to cope with human tactical innovation and ruthless efficiency. Earth's transformation from quarantined primitive world to galactic military power happened with stunning speed. Human advisors worked with alien commanders to develop new strategies, while Earth's technology advanced by thousands of years through alien scientific cooperation. The planet that had been hidden from galactic civilization became its most important military asset.